Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely, and I just want to record a short podcast on one of the most pernicious of all of the lies about the war in Gaza. There are so many pernicious lies that it's hard to pick on just one, but this one is the most nefarious, and the one that, because it seems on the face of it to be quite innocuous, it tends to get believed. And by dint of repetition, it very quickly becomes conventional wisdom, even among those who are not especially sympathetic to Israel. And the pernicious lie that I'm referring to is the claim that as of October the 6th, 2023, there existed a ceasefire, and that Hamas, when it launched its attack on October the 7th, had violated a ceasefire. And so when I say that it seems innocuous, that to anyone who doesn't follow these things particularly closely, I mean, this may seem plausible. Well, yeah, there was a ceasefire, and Hamas, as everyone is always told, is a terrorist organization, and this terrorist organization did what terrorist organizations do. They violated a ceasefire. So not only did Hamas commit horrific crimes on October the 7th, but it also violated a ceasefire that was in place. So, as I said, there have been so many lies put about, about the mass rapes that took place on October the 7th, that Hamas killed 1,400 civilians on October the 7th, that Hamas never intended to return any of the hostages, that Hamas had no interest in a ceasefire, one lie after another, not to mention all of the targeting of Israel, which are always, according to Israel, directed only at military or Hamas targets, and never targeted at civilians. But the story of the ceasefire, which was supposedly in place on October the 6th, is a complete lie. It's a complete fabrication from Israel. And as happens, once Israel fabricates a particular story, then it gets repeated by Israeli government officials, it gets repeated by AIPAC, then it gets repeated by politicians, it gets repeated by Israel's wide array of champions, and then it gets on television talk shows, and every time there is a pro-Israeli commentator on one of these talk shows, he points out, oh, there was a ceasefire in place on October the 6th, and Hamas violated the ceasefire. So here's a sampling of these claims. We have uh, so here we have Hillary Clinton. Well, who'd have thunk? Hillary Clinton, who makes this claim that there was a ceasefire on October the 6th, and Hamas chose to break it. And so here it is. Former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton goes viral with a long explanation of the situation in Gaza and why she's not calling for a ceasefire. Remember, there was a ceasefire on October the 6th that Hamas broke by their barbaric assault on peaceful civilians. So that's another lie, of course, that all of the people attacked on October the 6th were peaceful civilians. Although there were obviously many of the people attacked were serving in the Israeli Defense Forces. And there was a ceasefire. It did not hold because Hamas chose to break it. So naturally, she's out of the gate right away, and to declare that there was the ceasefire, and Hamas chose to break this ceasefire. And then Hamas have been consistently Hamas have consistently broken ceasefires over a number of years. So Hamas breaks the ceasefires, not Israel. Completely contrary to all of the historical evidence, but there it is. She gets on the View. View gets, quite a large audience, and she's there to tell the audience, "Oh, there was a ceasefire." And then we have a Democratic congressman, a very reliable shill for Israel, Congressman Brad Sherman. And he says here, this is from the Jerusalem Post, Representative Brad Sherman told a room of other officials and pro-Israel Jewish and Christian activists that there can be no ceasefire in Gaza until the Hamas terrorist organization is eliminated. And ultimately, we have to do the job to see the Middle East without Hamas. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus. And then when Hamas decided to go further and carry out the October the 7th attack, they knew they would die, and they are dying by the thousands now thanks to the IDF. So they're just dying by the thousands, and of course, civilians. There are no civilians basically in Gaza, but they were willing to do it to put those pictures on screens worldwide and mobile phones. We had a ceasefire on October the 6th, and then Hamas exploded out of Gaza. So again, boom, you have to repeat this story. Here's the meeting at the United Nations, 8th of December, 2023. And here's the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. And then he says here, regional stability and security of Israelis and Gazans can be achieved once Hamas is eliminated, and the true path to that goal means supporting Israel's mission, not a ceasefire. On October the 6th, there was a ceasefire in place. There it is. He tells the United Nations on October the 6th, there was a ceasefire in place. But on October the 7th, Hamas broke the ceasefire with an unprovoked invasion, he said, adding that a ceasefire would cement Hamas's control of Gaza without military pressure. No amount of diplomacy can secure the release of hostages. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that let's leave aside the fact that for 16 years, Israel has imposed a blockade on Gaza. That's 16 years. No one goes in or no one goes out of Gaza without Israel's say-so. No goods come in, no goods leave Gaza without Israel's say-so. And even, with that blockade, Israel has repeatedly attacked Gaza. I mean, we had the 2008, 2014, 2017, 2019, 2021. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And Israel has been doing this. So all that is invariably forgotten whenever there's a discussion about October the 7th. So leave that aside. Leave that aside. But there is that story that, well, on October the 6th, there was a ceasefire. So let's forget everything else that Israel has done. We'll just ignore all of that. We'll just focus just on this little issue that on October the 6th, there was a ceasefire. We don't have to know anything else that's been going on. Nothing about the blockade, nothing about all the Gazans that Israel had killed over the years, all the invasions of Gaza over the years. We don't have to do none of that. Let's not waste time on that. Don't you know there was a ceasefire on October the 6th? But of course, and as we'll see in a moment, there was no ceasefire. This is completely made up. This is totally made up out of whole cloth. by Israel in order to do what Israel always does, and Israel is masterful at doing, which is to present itself as the victim. It's always the victim. There's always these terrible Arabs want to do some terrible things to them. So they are the perpetual victims, and they're just trying to defend themselves from all these really irrational, insane murderers. Here's the embassy of Israel to the USA. Ceasefire now. There was a ceasefire on October the 6th. Hamas violated it. Let's always get that message out. Um, Ceasefire now. Hamas officials have promised to repeat the massacre of October the 7th. They haven't, actually. Ceasefire now. What would happen to the hostages held in Gaza? Fire will only really cease when Hamas is defeated. Always keep in mind what's never repeated, or rather never said in the media, is that Hamas offered to release all of the hostages immediately after October the 7th in exchange for Israel not invading Gaza. Now, you can argue that that's not necessarily a great deal, and Israel was bound to retaliate after the attack on October the 7th, so Israel may not have wanted to accept the deal, but nonetheless, Hamas made that offer after October the 7th to release all of the hostages, and Israel rejected it. Ambassador Michael Herzog, kind of former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Whoever calls for a ceasefire in Gaza must realize that this is an assured recipe for future wars, bloodshed, and tragedies. Hamas has used every past ceasefire to regroup, reinforce its hold on Gaza, rearm, and relaunch attacks against innocent civilians. There was a ceasefire in place on October the 6th. Hamas should not be rewarded for launching an all-out war on October the 7th and thus committing heinous atrocities. So there it is. And then we have Merav Elon Shahar, Israel's ambassador in Geneva. So this is at the World Health Organization. He said, on 6th of October, there was a ceasefire with Hamas. On 7th of October, we woke up to a new reality. Hamas is responsible for this suffering. She said, if we stop now, Hamas will carry out another 7th of October. So you see, they're all reading from the same script. And then, of course, all their American shills repeat these talking points. They go on with Hannity or Piers Morgan, and they have that talking point down. Oh, there was a ceasefire on October the 6th. AIPAC, there was a ceasefire on October the 6th. And then here's another one of these Israel shills, Seth Frantzman, Foundation of Defense of Democracies. 7th of October the 7th pushed the region closer to a regional war. Then Iran got Hezbollah and the Houthis and the Iraqi militias to join. Iran started a regional war. Iran-backed Hamas murdered more than 1,000 people on October the 7th. There was a ceasefire on October the 6th. Iran destroyed it. So he adds Iran to it, but there was a ceasefire on October the 6th. And Jerusalem Post editorial, we had a ceasefire. Hamas broke it. Those who are calling for the end to the fighting between Israel and Hamas have clearly forgotten that there was a ceasefire between the two parties. Yeah, they've forgotten because there never was a ceasefire. And you notice how whenever they say this, there was a ceasefire, they never explain, okay, when was this ceasefire agreement signed? Who signed it? What was the date? When did it actually go into effect? But they never said. They just said there was a ceasefire, and this is why I say it's pernicious, because it's the kind of lie that people are likely to believe. Well, it sounds plausible. Well, there was a ceasefire, and a terrorist organization broke it. I mean, what do you expect? It's a terrorist organization. Of course, it broke it. Israel is the innocent party. It's always the innocent party. It's just just going about its daily lives, and then it just gets attacked completely out of the blue. So there was a ceasefire between the two parties until the morning of October the 7th, when thousands of terrorists invaded Israel, murdering, beheading, raping, and mutilating hundreds of Israelis. The terrorists also kidnapped more than 240 people, and half of whom are still being held in the hostage in Gaza Strip. It was Hamas, not Israel, that breached the ceasefire. This war was not initiated by Israel, so not initiated. So nothing that Israel has done um, counts for anything. It was not initiated by Israel. Nothing. Everything else is, everything in the, all of the blockade, the killings, the starvation, all of that. That didn't count for anything. This war was not initiated by Israel. Israel is just an injured, innocent party in all of this. Because there was a ceasefire in place. Well, if there was a ceasefire in place, then obviously Israel is the injured party. I mean, there was a ceasefire. I mean, so not, we don't have to pay anything, any attention to anything. There was just a ceasefire. But this is, of course, always the way um, wars are covered in the U.S. media. This is the whole function of propaganda is never to provide any kind of historical context. So you can start um, in the telling of any story on exactly the date that you want to start telling the story. So everything that happened before then counts for nothing. It doesn't matter. Well, let's pick a particular date, and then we start telling the story. So we start the date on October the 7th. Nothing happened before that, so we just begin on October the 7th. And the innumerable examples. I mean, like 9/11. Nothing happened before the 9/11 terrorist attacks. So apparently, again, America was just minding its own business. Suddenly, out of the blue, it was attacked. Or when you talk about Yugoslavia, Srebrenica, July 1995, Srebrenica. Nothing that happened before July 1995 counts for anything. We just begin telling the story on July 1995. Or in the case of Russia and Ukraine, well, we just start telling the story on February 24th, 2022. Everything else that happened before that, all the Minsk, the overthrow of Yanukovych, everything, the killings that have been taking place since 2014 and so on. No, that don't count for anything. We'll just start on this particular date. So here we just start on October 7th. Well, it was a ceasefire. So obviously we're the innocent party. Now, let's just take a look, a quick perusal of stories about what was going on in 2023. Here is Al Jazeera, 27th of January, 2023. Palestinians, including an elderly woman in the Jenin refugee camp, blah, blah. Okay, local sources in Gaza told Al Jazeera that Israeli warplanes had hit Al-Maghazi refugee camp in the center of the territory, with at least 13 strikes in the early hours of Friday. So this is January 2023. 13 strikes in the early hours of Friday. The Al Zaytun neighborhood in the south of Gaza City was also hit, as well as an open area east of Beit Hanun in northern Gaza. Witnesses and local media reported that Israeli drones fired 2 missiles at targets in Gaza before the fighter jets struck. This is The Guardian, and this is from February 2023. Israel carries out airstrikes on Gaza Strip. Israeli army confirms striking in the Gaza Strip early on Thursday, hours after it said it intercepted a rocket fired from the Palestinian territory. So the 2nd of February, it was an AFP story. Israel conducted airstrikes on the central Gaza Strip early on Thursday, hours after the military said it intercepted a rocket fired from the Palestinian territory. New rounds of rockets were fired from Gaza after these strikes, and fresh explosions could be heard from Gaza City about 3:15 a.m. local time. In a statement issued at 2:41 a.m., the Israeli army confirmed it was striking in the Gaza Strip. Okay. According to local security sources and witnesses, the first strikes, at least 7, hit a training center of the Ezzeddin al-Qassam brigades, the armed wing of the Palestinian Islamist movement Hamas, and so on. And then the second round of airstrikes by the Israeli army targeted the al-Qassam brigade's training center southwest of Gaza City. Okay, Al Jazeera, 5th of April, 2023. Israeli planes have attacked multiple sites in Gaza, striking targets at a military site west of the city and a site in the Nuseirat refugee camp in the center of the Strip. The raids took place early on Wednesday morning following Israeli police attacks on worshippers at Al-Aqsa Mosque overnight. The Israeli attacks on Gaza was preceded by 4 missiles fired earlier on Wednesday from Gaza in response to the police raid on Al-Aqsa. Witnesses said Israeli tanks also fired at Hamas positions along the Gaza Strip southern border. And then here's Reuters. This is May the 9th, 2023. Israel kills 3 Islamic Jihad leaders, 10 civilians in Gaza. And then Israel killed 3 Islamic Jihad commanders in Gaza and at least 10 civilians, including several children, in surprise pre-dawn airstrikes on Tuesday, drawing threats of reprisals and warnings of further escalation in fighting. The strikes targeting senior militant commanders, Israel said, had planned attacks on Gaza and the Israeli-occupied West Bank were the latest in an extended period of Israeli-Palestinian violence, stretching back more than a year. The latest in an extended period of Israeli-Palestinian violence stretching back more than a year. I hope we're going to come to this ceasefire, because we want to see the signing of the ceasefire agreement. And then here we are, also May 2023, Al Jazeera, Israel strikes Gaza, killing 13 people, including 4 children. Israel has carried out a series of strikes on Gaza, killing at least 13 people, including 3 members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement, with Palestinian authorities saying women and 4 children were among the dead. Al Jazeera's Yuman El Said, reporting from Gaza, said the Ministry of Health declared on Tuesday that at least 20 others were injured in the pre-dawn strikes, in which more than 40 Israeli warplanes carried out attacks for nearly 2 hours, starting at 2 a.m. on Tuesday. And then this Palestinian Islamic Jihad said 3 of its commanders were killed in the air attacks and pledged to avenge the deaths. Here's Amnesty International, June 2023. Maybe Amnesty will tell us about this ceasefire. But no, it says Israel civilian deaths and extensive destruction in latest Gaza offensive highlight human toll of apartheid. In its early May offensive on the occupied Gaza Strip, Israel unlawfully destroyed Palestinian homes, often without military necessity, in what amounts to a form of collective punishment against the civilian population. Amnesty International said today Israel also conducted apparently disproportionate airstrikes which killed and injured Palestinian civilians, including children. Amnesty International investigated 9 Israeli airstrikes that resulted in the killing of civilians and in the damage and destruction of residential buildings in the Gaza Strip. 3 separate attacks on the first night of bombing on 9th of May, in which precision-guided bombs targeted 3 senior Al-Quds brigade commanders, killed 10 Palestinian civilians, and injured at least 20 others. They were launched into densely populated urban areas when families were sleeping at home, which suggests that those who planned and authorized the attacks anticipated and largely disregarded the disproportionate harm to civilians. So that's happened also in May 2023. And now here is OCHA. This is Agency of the United Nations. The report, 5th to the 18th of September, 2023. So we're coming close now to October the 7th. It says 5 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip as an explosive device went off near Israel's perimeter fence. On the 13th of September, Palestinians demonstrated near the fence east of Gaza City to mark the 18th anniversary of the Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. Demonstrators burned tires and threw stones at Israeli forces' observation posts. Israeli forces shot live ammunition and tear gas canisters, injuring 15 Palestinians, including 6 children. During the demonstration, a group of Palestinians approached the fence carrying an explosive device which detonated, killing 5 of them, including 2 children. Okay. Then other Palestinians in Gaza were injured in demonstrations near the Israeli perimeter fence on the 15th, 17th, and 18th of September, as hundreds of Palestinians protested near Israel's perimeter fence around Gaza. Demonstrators burned tires, threw stones and explosive devices at Israeli observation posts, and Israeli forces fired live ammunition, rubber bullets, and tear gas canisters, injuring 33 Palestinians, including 6 children. On the 15th of September, Israeli forces conducted airstrikes and launched missiles into Gaza, reportedly targeting military outposts belonging to armed groups near the fence, injuring 1 Palestinian. Also in the Gaza Strip, in at least 22 incidents, Israeli forces opened warning fire near Israel's perimeter fence or off the coast. During those incidents, 4 fishermen were injured, 2 others were arrested, and 1 fishing boat was confiscated. So still no ceasefire. This very odd. And then here's a story from Reuters, October the 4th. So we're really getting quite close now to October the 7th. The headline is Gaza unrest shows economic misery under Israeli blockade. So there's an Israeli blockade. It was a ceasefire, but an Israeli blockade. Weeks of violent protests by young men in Gaza have sent a message about the dire financial squeeze in the Israeli blockaded enclave, economists and some senior Israeli officials believe, and relief measures may be in the offing. Well, they weren't. But we have weeks of violent protests during the ceasefire. Ostensibly, the protests, organized by youth groups but backed by Gaza's ruling Islamist movement, Hamas, were about the treatment of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails and visits by Jewish groups to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. And it says here, but a senior Israeli official noted the relative restraint by Hamas, which did not officially join the protest itself or launch more rockets at Israel. He suggested that the more immediate reason for the unrest was less long-time grievances related to Palestinian national cause and more to Gaza's economic misery. So this is the Gaza's economic misery during this idyllic period prior to October the 7th. And so there it is. Now, it seems, compared to all the lies that have been exposed by many commentators about the mass rapes, the lies about babies burnt in microwaves, 40 beheaded babies, and all the rest. I mean, we know all these lies. Every single one of them has been debunked. So in comparison with that, it does seem as if this is, relatively inconsequential. But of course, it isn't inconsequential because it's a very important part of the Israeli propaganda machine and therefore of the American propaganda machine. That Israel is always the innocent victim, it's always the injured party, and that Israel is only reacting to what others are doing to it. So apparently they're claiming there was a ceasefire in place. Israel was observing the ceasefire, and guess what? Hamas refused to observe the ceasefire, and that's what triggered everything that happened subsequently, so that everything that Israel has done since October the 7th, 2023, which is now almost 2 years now, everything is thoroughly justified by what happened October the 7th. And on top of that, it was a violation of the ceasefire. And so this, which gets repeated over and over again has the desired effect, because it enables people to believe that somehow there was nothing happened before October the 7th. Nothing. It was just nothing at all. Just out of the blue, Israel came under attack by really hateful, nasty, murderous militants. And so that's why it's a particularly pernicious lie, and should always be called out. So whenever next time somebody comes on one of these TV shows and claims, oh, there was a ceasefire in place on October the 6th, it's important always to point out that that is a lie. It's a lie put out by the Israeli government, its spokesman, and then of course it's repeated and and then goes into the echo chamber, and then everyone accepts it as conventional wisdom. Anyway, thank you very much, and remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.